Hello, welcome to Daily Faded. This is where we get faded daily and talk about the news and politics of the day. So I hope you will join me and take a toke or have a drink of whatever you like to relax with. Just going to wait a couple of seconds here for some people to get into the stream. Today is August 31st, 2020. This is TDF number 89. Trump defends Kyle Rittenhouse. Today's a particular day. It's a particular day of the year. It's August 31st. And this day is the anniversary of 9 years ago, my family losing our daughter, my sisters losing their sister. And it's a hard day to have all of that come rushing back. She was 3.5 years old. I'm sorry, 3.5 months old. She was 3.5 months old and needed heart surgery, and it failed. So the first thing I wanted to say tonight was that I find the world a little bit uneasy right now. I find the world a little bit uneasy. Well, I find it a lot uneasy, and I think anyone who doesn't find it uneasy is not paying attention. Anyway, putting all of that somewhat to the side, even though I can never really put it to the side. I said we were going to have a guest tonight. It turns out I was wrong. That should be happening later this week. I will let you know more when I know more. Before we get into the dirt of the day, let's talk about the COVID update. Worldwide, we're over 25.5 million cases with over 854,000 deaths worldwide. The United States has surpassed over the weekend 6 million cases, confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 6.2 million. We had 35,974 new cases today and 455 deaths today. The good news is those numbers are both down a little bit. The 455 deaths is down significantly from the 1,000 to 1,100 to 1,200 that we've been looking at over the last several days and over the last couple of weeks. So that's, some good news that the death number came down. Of course, it's still way too high. Here in California, we had 5,000 new cases confirmed today, bringing us to a total of 710,948 cases in California, which is more confirmed cases of COVID-19 than any other state in the union. And we've had 12,988 deaths, with 50 of them coming today in California. The biggest problem this country faces right now is the devastating pandemic and economic crisis that have come about as a result of COVID-19, and frankly, economic crises that predated COVID-19 and were simply exacerbated by COVID-19. But Donald Trump wants you to believe that rioting and looting is the biggest problem we face in this country now. In his White House press briefing today, Trump inched right up to the line of defending Kyle Rittenhouse, the Kenosha shooter who killed 2 and severely wounded a 3rd man last week in Kenosha during the protests. Kyle Rittenhouse, the alleged shooter, 17, drove in from Illinois with an illegal AR-15 style weapon. And the right has embraced Kyle Rittenhouse as a hero. Ann Coulter said she wants Kyle Rittenhouse, as her president. Trump, when asked about Kyle Rittenhouse, said, "That was an interesting situation. He was trying to get rid of away from them, and he fell, and then they very violently attacked him. It is something that we're looking at right now. It is under investigation. I guess he was in very big trouble. He probably would have been killed, but it is under investigation." Yes, Kyle Rittenhouse, the killer, probably would have been killed. Therefore, his killing is justified. That's the logic that he's using. And the logic that the right is using to defend Kyle Rittenhouse's actions is that they're taking still photos of him being attacked by people in the crowd after he had shot his first victim. People are attempting to disarm him. He stumbles, he turns around, he shoots one man in the stomach or the chest, killing him, and he shoots the second man who appeared to attack him with a skateboard. In the arm, nearly taking his arm off. When they post still photos from the video, they put him in a position of self-defense. But they're taking them out of context, because you have to ask yourself, self-defense from what? He had just shot and killed a person in the crowd and was being chased down after shooting and killing someone. And we know he knew that he had killed someone because there's video of him saying he shot someone on the phone. And if they want to justify his shootings as self-defense, then again, you have to contextualize them, and we have to look at what does it actually mean to be committing an act of self-defense. If you're a killer and people are chasing you down to stop you, and you decide to shoot the people who are chasing you down to stop you, those are suddenly shootings in self-defense? I don't think so. In fact, Kyle Rittenhouse's crimes literally meet the FBI's definition of terrorism. I looked up the FBI's definition of terrorism on FBI.gov. Terrorism is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations as, quote, the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. That is 28 from the Code of Federal Regulations. So, quote, the unlawful use of force and violence. It was unlawful for Kyle Rittenhouse to use or possess the assault weapon he used, to drive in from out of state with that weapon. Therefore, his use of force violence is by definition unlawful, regardless of self-defense. It was unlawful for him to have that weapon. It was unlawful for him to use that weapon. Quote, to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof. He was crystal clear that he was there to support the police with an assault weapon in multiple videos. Exactly what did he think he would be doing with that weapon, if not intimidation? If it wasn't meant to intimidate or coerce people, why was he there at all? And you can't make the argument that he was there to defend property, because his property is in Illinois. He has no right to go and shoot people in front of someone else's property. And, quote, in furtherance of political or social objectives. Rittenhouse's social media make it abundantly clear that he politically opposed Black Lives Matter and supported Donald Trump. So Kyle Rittenhouse, if he's guilty, is a terrorist. And there's an awful lot of video evidence to suggest that he is guilty and that he is also a terrorist. So now Trump is going to Kenosha tomorrow, but curiously enough, not meeting with the family of Jacob Blake. The father of Jacob Blake, this is according to CNN, said he is not, quote, dealing with politics, and that his family is focused on his son's health and recovery. This comes in response to President Trump's decision not to meet with the family during his trip to the city tomorrow. Quote, I'm not getting into politics. It's all about my son, man. It has nothing to do with a photo op. It has to do with Jacob's operation, Blake Sr. said. He said that his son is still paralyzed from the waist down and that he's holding on for dear life. It's saddening to me that people don't understand the type of pressure this family is under and what the rest of the family is dealing with, Blake Sr. said. President Trump said at a news conference earlier that he was not going to meet with the family because they wanted to have lawyers involved. Truth. He's not meeting with the family because they don't want to meet with him. They don't want to be a photo op for Donald Trump. Blake Sr. defended that position, saying, this is not politics. This is about the life of my son, and Benjamin Crump represents my family. Benjamin Crump told CNN he didn't know why the president wouldn't want the family to have their lawyers on the call, adding, he seems to have lawyers with him when he talks to people. We have a Department of Justice investigation going on, so it would be most appropriate to have your counsel on the phone when you're talking to anybody involved in the government that would determine whether those individuals will be held accountable for shooting your son 7 times in the back in front of your 3 grandchildren, Crump said. And he's right. So why is Trump going to Kenosha tomorrow? Trump is going to Kenosha tomorrow to encourage the militias. Trump is going to Kenosha tomorrow to provide support and cover for Kyle Rittenhouse and for any other militia member who might like to take a few shots at Black Lives Matter protesters. That's why Trump is going to Kenosha. Trump tweeted, if I didn't insist on having the National Guard activate and go into Kenosha, Wisconsin, there would be no Kenosha right now. Also, there would have been great death and injury. I want to thank law enforcement and the National Guard. I will see you on Tuesday. There would be no Kenosha right now, Trump tweeted. There would be no Kenosha right now. I won't go off on how self-centered his worldview is. This thought that Kenosha would have been destroyed by Black Lives Matter. Destroyed in a week, if not for Donald Trump sending in the National Guard. His hyperbole is very dangerous. Very dangerous. Joe Biden? Hold on. Joe motherfucking Biden responded to Donald Trump today by speaking into the internets. Quote, this president long ago forfeited any moral leadership in this country. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. Rioting is not protesting, Mr. Biden said of the unrest. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a... This is a little bit later on in the speech. Do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really? I want a safe America, safe from COVID, safe from crime and looting, safe from racially motivated violence, safe from bad cops. Let me be crystal clear, safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump. So this was actually quite a good speech that Biden gave earlier in the day today. But my biggest concern is that I was watching it on Twitter and there were only 5,000 people watching it. Trump's nonsense today, talking to the press, that was shown on all of the cable news channels probably, that's going to be seen by millions of people. How many people are actually going to see what Joe Biden said? How many people are actually going to hear what Joe Biden said? More people will see the doctored video of Joe Biden falling asleep in a TV studio that was tweeted out by Trumpers. Who was it? Was it Mark Meadows who tweeted that out? I don't remember who tweeted that one out. No, it wasn't Mark Meadows. I think it's worth checking in with the polling right now. Before the RNC in the morning consult poll, Biden was at 50, Trump was at 42. After the RNC, Biden is at 50, Trump is at 44. So he picked up 2 points from 8 points up to 6 points up. That is a tightening race. Yahoo News and YouGov released a poll. Before the RNC, Biden 49, Trump 40. After the RNC, Biden 47, Trump 41. So in that one, it tightened up by 3 points from Biden being ahead by 6 from having been ahead by 9. And the most concerning of the current polling data that's out there right now is the Real Clear Politics Battleground States average. On August 30th of 2016, Clinton was up 4.6 points across the battleground states, which she then went on to lose in rather remarkable fashion to give us Trump. She was up 4.6% in battleground states. Joe Biden, August 30th of 2020, was up 2.7 across the battleground states. So this polling now puts us very much into the territory Hillary Clinton was in at this time in the 2016 race, which means we've turned a corner and we've now found ourselves at a place where Donald Trump has a good shot at winning. He has a good shot at closing this gap. He has a good shot at catching up to Joe Biden, and he clearly has a good shot of winning in the battleground states. I still think the situation will be working against Trump because COVID catastrophes will happen. Excuse me, my Beyond Burger from dinner seems to be asserting itself. So all of us are hopeful that Donald Trump will self-immolate every day. But exactly how big of a conflagration, how big of a self-immolation do we need to see in order to start keeping some Trump supporters home or convincing some Trump supporters to vote for Joe Biden? Trump makes the news every day. Biden hasn't really made the news in 10 days since his DNC speech. I can't think of a big story about Joe Biden in the last 10 days. There have been interviews, there have been appearances, but not a big news story. Nothing about him in Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. So, look, I will do some watching of the evening cable news shows tonight because I'm curious to see whether Joe Biden's speech today gets as much airtime on CNN and MSNBC as everything Donald Trump was up to. My working theory has been that Trump will fail between now and the election multiple times. It's inevitable. School epidemics and outbreaks, flu season, evictions, hunger, a faulty election. There are so many ways that Trump can fail in the coming months. But Biden is leaving it up to externalities at this point. If he doesn't change his strategy, if he doesn't come out of his basement, if he doesn't make a scene, if he doesn't get some attention, if he doesn't earn some earned media, then we're in danger of 4 more years of Donald Trump. I don't just want to talk about Donald Trump tonight. I also want to talk about racial justice, white supremacy, and everything that we're fighting for in this country right now when it comes to ending racial injustice, ending white supremacy in our institutions and in our society. So I thought it was a very powerful symbol that when the NBA players went on strike and then all of the other professional athletes followed suit, disappointed to hear that LeBron and some of the other players went to Barack Obama for advice, and Obama told them, don't stop playing. Their greatest tool is to strike from playing. That's the greatest way to bring more awareness, to focus more attention, and to refocus attention on the fact that people are being killed because of the color of their skin, Jacob Blake was not treated like a full human being. He was dehumanized and is lucky to be alive today. Dave Zirin wrote in The Nation that the professional sports strikes have achieved three main things: recentering the conversation around Jacob Blake and not on anarchists burning cities and all the ways the right has tried to reframe what is happening; two, capturing people's imagination about labor striking for Black lives, which is hugely important that we start to connect economic political activity with racial political activity, that we connect economic justice with racial justice. And the third was giving a sense of hope during a period of profound sadness and helplessness, from the Kenosha shootings to that feeling that we marched after Floyd's murder, yet here we are, nothing changes. So I do think it was more than just symbolism for the NBA players to strike. But I think a short-lived strike is not nearly as effective or powerful as a long-lived strike. And I hope that these players will be willing to head into wildcat strikes again in the future when their voices are needed, when the country is crying out for leadership. This live stream is moving along very quickly. Huffington Post, also known as HuffPo. U.S. faces a perfect storm of political violence heading into November election. There have been nearly 11,000 demonstrations in the U.S. this summer, as well as a rising tide of state repression and vigilante violence. Article by Christopher Mathias. Law enforcement and other authorities used force while intervening in nearly 400 Black Lives Matter protests since the police killed George Floyd in May, according to new data that paints the clearest portrait yet of the historic unrest that swept across the U.S. this summer. Figures from the U.S. Crisis Monitor, part of the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, a non-governmental organization, offer a bleak forecast of escalating political violence heading into a contentious election. While most of the protests have been nonviolent, police or other authorities intervened in about 725 Black Lives Matter protests in the U.S. between May 24th and August 22nd, sometimes using force, including tear gas, rubber bullets, or beating demonstrators with batons, according to the ACLED data. There was also over 100 instances of government violence directed against the media during this period. On top of that, ACLED identified over 100 events in which non-state actors, including at least 20 distinct far-right militia groups, have intervened in Black Lives Matter demonstrations, sometimes violently, since May 24th. There were also dozens of cases of individual perpetrators, some linked to white supremacist groups like the KKK, driving vehicles into Black Lives Matter demonstrators. So this data, coming from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, is absolutely crucial to understanding where we are right now in America in a time of social upheaval and social unrest. The place where we're at is that the dominant theme is that of nonviolent protesters being attacked by police, being attacked by various nefarious right-wing organizations. That is the violence that has been happening all summer long, just like it's the same violence that has been happening throughout the history of our country. This notion that white suburban people have been attacked is simply not true. Yes, there was the person gunned down in Portland over the weekend, and I think anyone who's really and truly on the left does not approve of it on its face. Because we don't approve of violence as a form of political speech on the left. Unlike the right, who not only show no qualms about doing it, but they seem to get excited about committing violence against the left. The article continues. Right-wing groups have organized about 360 demonstrations in opposition to Black Lives Matter, often under the banner of Blue Lives Matter. Some demonstrations were also organized in support of President Donald Trump or Confederate statues. All told, according to ACLED's data, over 40 of those right-wing demonstrations have resulted in violence since May. This adds to recent findings from the Center for Analysis of the Radical Right, which identified nearly 500 incidents of vigilantes or far-right activists confronting Black Lives Matter demonstrators since May. Those incidents include 64 cases of simple assault, 38 cases of vigilantes driving cars into demonstrators, and 9 times that shots were fired at protesters. At least 6 left-wing protesters have been shot during the demonstrations, 3 of whom died. I don't know if that last figure includes Kenosha last week. I don't think it does because the study only runs through August 22nd, which would be before the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings. Look, this data coming out from this organization just shows the depth and the breadth of right-wing / law enforcement attacks on peaceful protest. And that really is the problem here. The problem is the systemic racism and white supremacy over which the protesters are protesting. That is the first problem. And then the second problem is cops coming out to hurt protesters, cops coming out to hurt media who are covering the protests. And people like Senator Ron Johnson, who said on State of the Union yesterday to Dana Bash on CNN, the way you stop the violence is you surge manpower and resources, citizen soldiers, National Guard, and overwhelm the number of rioters so they can't riot. You surge manpower and resources, citizen soldiers, National Guard. So Ron Johnson is perfectly happy just lumping his citizen soldiers, his militia members, in with law enforcement and letting them do the work with law enforcement. That should be frightening because that is the brown shirts in Germany, the black shirts in Italy, in Mussolini's Italy. In both cases, they went out and started fights and provoked violence and led to the leader, whether it was Hitler or Mussolini, saying he was the only one who could deliver the nation from the violence that was gripping it, even though that violence was being caused by his very own supporters. Both Hitler and Mussolini did this, and it is not outrageous or too far gone to compare Trump to Hitler in this respect. So I have one more story from The Guardian that I want to talk about real quickly. But first I'm going to smoke, and I hope you'll join me. This was from The Guardian. All right, Joseph Stalin. I'll keep that in mind. I don't know who Joseph Rosenbaum is, though. In a nice way, I like chasing children, too. Like, I have some children, and chasing them around the yard is a lot of fun. As long as Joseph Rosenbaum is doing a good kind of chasing, then we're fine with that. So this is from The Guardian. White supremacists and militias have infiltrated police across U.S., report says. A former FBI agent has documented links between serving officers and racist militant activities in more than a dozen states. Ah, yes, Joseph Rosenbaum, the first victim in Kenosha. That's right. Now I recognize that name. White supremacist groups have infiltrated U.S. law enforcement agencies in every region of the country over the last 2 decades, according to a new report about the ties between police and far-right vigilante groups. In a timely new analysis, Michael German, a former FBI special agent who has written extensively on the ways that U.S. law enforcement have failed to respond to far-right domestic terror threats, concludes that U.S. law enforcement officials have been tied to racist militant activities in more than a dozen states since 2000, and hundreds of police officers have been caught posting racist and bigoted social media content. The report notes that over the years, police links to militias and white supremacy groups have been uncovered in states including Alabama, California, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia. So we have gangs in the LA Sheriff's Department, literal gangs within the Sheriff's Department, where the sheriffs have tattoos to signify which cop gang they're in, and they cover for each other, and all kinds of bad things going on with LA County sheriffs, and probably some white supremacy in there, although I don't know about it specifically to talk about it. But these contacts between white supremacy and law enforcement are all over the place. And so it should come as a surprise to no one when law enforcement sides with the far right and offers them water right before they go and shoot protesters. God, it's an ugly world that we live in right now. Thank you for tuning in. I will be back at 8 o'clock Pacific tomorrow night. Peace out.